Hello and welcome to our clinical log tutorial. Clinical logs in speech-language pathology (SLP) are important for tracking your clinical experiences and activities. For each encounter, they capture important information such as the clinical educator, date of the encounter, patient demographics, and the time spent on both interventional and evaluative practices. In this tutorial, we will guide you through the process of submitting clinical logs and running reports to manage your clinical data efficiently. You can submit clinical logs in multiple ways. The first way is from the Course Activities tab within the Coursework section. To navigate to this section, select the View All Coursework button from your dashboard. You can also click on the Coursework option from the upper left-hand hamburger menu. Select the course name for which you would like to add clinical logs. Then scroll down to the Clinical Logs section. In the Clinical Log section, you can see the total number of logs, the number of logs separated by status, and the average number of logs submitted per day. Additionally, to the right of each log count, you will find the number of hours and minutes indicated on those clinical logs. Click the plus icon at the top of the Clinical Logs section to add a new clinical log. A drawer will open, which you will complete. Please note that the sections in this clinical log may change depending on the needs of your program. You will need to populate any field marked with a red asterisk before you can submit the log. To indicate the clinical educator who supervised your encounter, click on the Clinical Educator drop-down and select the educator. If a clinical educator has not yet been added to this placement, click on the Add Clinical Educator button and provide the necessary information on the newly opened form. After you have entered the information, be sure to click on the Save button. This new clinical educator will then be assigned to your placement in this course. Then, click on the calendar icon in the Date of Service section to select the date of the encounter. You will then need to fill in some patient demographic information and other encounter details if necessary. In the Types of Services Delivered section, you will indicate how much time you spent on interventional and evaluative practice for the available treatment options. For example, if you spent 30 minutes performing a voice and resonance interventional treatment, enter 30 at the intersection of the voice and resonance row and the intervention column. The total time spent on interventional and evaluative treatment will populate at the bottom of the table. Lastly, in the Additional Details section, you can provide comments about the encounter in the Comments text area. You can also upload a related document in the Document Upload section. For example, if you keep track of your undergraduate clinical hours within a document outside the Exxat Prism system, you could upload the document here to maintain a record of undergraduate clinical hours in the system. To upload a document, click on the Supporting Front Document button and select the document to upload. Please keep in mind the supporting file types and size limits below the Supporting Front Document button. If at any point you would like to save your clinical log to come back and complete it later, click on the Save button. Once you are finished filling the clinical log, you can submit the log to your school faculty for review by clicking on the Submit button. You can view all of your clinical logs added by clicking on the total number of logs. This will take you to a table displaying all the logs added to this placement. At the top of the page, you will see the total number of logs and the number of logs separated by status. Below this, you will see the total number of hours indicated on your clinical logs and the number of hours separated by status. Click on the count of logs of a given status to view the logs of that status. Saved clinical logs will be assigned the In Progress status. Submitted clinical logs will be assigned the Pending Review status. Pending review clinical logs will then be reviewed by your school faculty or clinical educator if you sent them for review. If they approve your log, it will be assigned the Approved status. As your clinical educator or school faculty reviews your clinical logs, they may request additional information. If this is the case, they will assign the Needs Attention status to your clinical log. You will need to review any logs marked as Needs Attention to make the necessary changes and send it for review once again. To make changes to a Needs Attention clinical log, click on the log ID for the clinical log. The reviewer's feedback will appear at the top of the log in the School Feedback section. You can then make the necessary changes and click on the Submit button once you are finished. To download a clinical log for offline access, click on the Export icon. A PDF will then be downloaded containing the clinical log. You can click on the log ID of Pending Review or In Progress clinical logs to make changes to these logs as well. However, you will not be able to make changes to approved clinical logs. To export the table of your clinical log submissions, click on the Export icon. To add a new clinical log, click on the Add Clinical Log button. Your clinical educator will let you know how often they would like you to send your logs for them to review. They may want you to send your logs weekly. If this is the case, please submit your logs regularly during the week, then at the end of the week, send them to your clinical educator. To send your clinical logs for your clinical educator to review, click on the Send for Clinical Educator Review button. Please note that you should have at least one pending review clinical log entry which has a clinical educator selected. When you click on the Send for Clinical Educator Review button, a window will open displaying the number of clinical logs that will be sent and who they will be sent to. Click on the Send button if you are sure you would like to send these clinical logs for review. It is also possible to access this clinical log table for a placement using the Learning Activities section. To access this clinical log table, click on the upper left-hand hamburger menu and select the Learning Activities option. Then click on the Clinical Logs tab. In the Clinical Log tab, you will see a list of all the courses and placements where clinical logs were activated. Click on the Summary drop-down at the top of the page to view your total number of clinical logs added, and the number of these logs assigned each status. On the right-hand side of the summary accordion, you can view the total amount of time indicated on your clinical logs and the amount of time assigned each status. Click on the filter icon to filter the placements by placement setting and clinical log status. You can also use the search box to find a specific placement. Next to the placement details column, there will be a column displaying the total logs. In the log count by status, there will be a column displaying the status of each of your submitted logs. Click on one of the statuses of a specific placement to view the clinical log page for that placement filter to only show clinical logs of that status. We offer a quick and easy way to add clinical logs from your dashboard. Navigate to your dashboard and select the placement you would like to add logs to in the MI Placements section. In the clinical log section, you can view your total number of logs submitted in the placement and the number of approved and needs attention clinical logs. Click on the Add Clinical Log button to add a new clinical log. You can also click on the calendar icon to the right of the Add Clinical Log button to view the dates of submitted clinical logs. We offer reports on clinical log data for you to check that you have enough clinical encounters to meet your graduation requirements. To run these clinical log reports, navigate to the Learning Activities section by clicking on the View Learning Activities hyperlink from the new Student Dashboard. If you are using the old Student Dashboard, select the Learning Activities option. You can also navigate to the Learning Activities section by clicking on the upper left-hand hamburger menu and selecting the Learning Activities option. Once you are within the Learning Activities section, click on the Reports tab. The Clinical Log Aggregate report empowers you to monitor your patient log counts and track your logging experiences throughout your courses. You can take ownership of your learning by proactively using this report to ensure you are meeting all necessary benchmarks and logging requirements on time. To run the Clinical Log Aggregate report, click on the corresponding report's hyperlink. You will then need to click on the Select Course Offerings button to indicate the course offerings you would like to run the report on. You can search for specific courses by course number using the search box. To change the type of the search box, click on the drop-down to the left of the box. You can then search by course name, academic year, professional year, term or cohort. To filter the courses, click on the filter icon. You can then filter the courses by cohort, academic year, or term. Select the courses you would like to run the report on. If you would like to select all of the courses, check the box in the upper left-hand corner of the page. After you have made your selections, click on the Apply button. You will then configure the report. Please note that other clinical log reports may not have the same configuration options. Indicate which rotations you would like to include in the report by clicking on the rotation drop-down. For example, if you would only like to view aggregate clinical log data for the Externship 2 rotation, select this rotation and leave the others unselected. You can then do the same for settings, clinical log status, site, and location. To run this report on logs submitted between specific dates, click on the calendar icon in the From Date section to select a From Date. Then click on the calendar icon in the To Date section to select a date. In the Group By section, indicate how you would like to group the aggregation of data. For example, if you were placed in different courses in the same setting, you may want to aggregate your clinical log data by setting and then by course. This way you can view the total aggregate clinical log data for each setting and break this down further by course. Once you are done, click on the Generate Report button. The report will then be loaded below. You can view the number of times you selected specific options on your clinical logs, aggregated by your predefined criteria. Scroll right to navigate through all of the clinical log options. There will also be a section that aggregates the clinical log time you have logged. This is especially useful to ensure you are conducting enough of the necessary types of treatments to ensure you are meeting your program's graduation requirements. You can download this report and share it with your clinical instructors to receive feedback on your actual clinical exposure and progress. You can also leverage the data from the clinical log aggregate report to highlight your clinical exposure and experiences for future employment opportunities and include it in your ePortfolio. To download the clinical log aggregate report, click on the export icon to the right of the Generate button. The clock hours report aggregates clinical log hours for easy access to ensure you meet your graduation requirements. This report breaks down your hours by participation type, type of services delivered, and age range of patients serviced. To run this report, navigate to the Reports tab of the Learning Activities section and click on the Clock Hours Report hyperlink. You will then need to select the courses for which you would like to run the report on. You will then configure the report. You can indicate which rotations, settings, clinical log statuses, sites, and locations, dates indicated on the clinical logs for which you would like to include in the report. Then, using the Clinical Educator drop-down, select your clinical educators who are assigned to the clinical logs for which you would like included in the report. For example, if you would not like the logs assigned to Danny Weingarten included in the report, you would want to select all the other clinical educators and leave Danny Weingarten deselected. Using the Mode of Delivery drop-down, you can choose which modes of delivery you would like included in the report. For example, if you would like to run the report to view clinical hours which had an in-person mode of delivery, select the in-person option and leave the others unselected. Lastly, in the Training Level section, indicate if you would like to run this report on graduate-level encounters or undergraduate encounters. Once you have configured all the options, click on the Generate Report button. The placement table displays the placement information for the selected courses. The next table breaks down the student clinical hours by patient age, demographic, and mode of delivery. The total number of hours for the selected clinical logs is displayed in the bottom right-hand corner of the table. The following few tables display the number of intervention and evaluation clinical hours with relation to each of the types of services delivered, bifurcated by patient age group. Please keep in mind, the total number of hours is displayed as a row within each table. Below this, you will find a table displaying the total number of evaluation and intervention hours. Below this, another 4 tables are displayed breaking up the 2 intervention and evaluation tables. Both the intervention and evaluation tables are broken up by student participation type, direct contact, and observation. Again, the student clinical hours added to each of the types of service are displayed and bifurcated by patient age group. Under the direct contact and observation sections, there will be a small table displaying the total direct contact hours and total observation hours. Below this, there are 2 other tables displaying clinical hours with relation to placement settings and training level. Lastly, at the bottom of the page, you will see the attestations that supervisors have attested to and the number of hours they reviewed. If you would like to export this report for offline access, click on the Export icon at the top of the page, located next to the Generate Report button. Lastly, you can use the raw data report to view all of your added clinical logs according to your desired criteria. To run this report, navigate to the Reports tab of the Learning Activities section and select the Clinical Log Raw Data Report. You will then need to select the courses that you would like to run the report on and configure the report options. After this, you will need to select the rotations, settings, statuses, sites, and locations that you would like included in the report. After you have configured the report, click on the Generate Report button. In the table below, there will be a row for each log entry. You can view the course for which the log was added, placement information, and the clinical log information. You can scroll right to view all the options selected on each clinical log. If you would like to download this report in the Excel format, click on the Download icon. Click on the View Log button to open your log in a new tab and update any information as necessary. Thank you for watching our Completing Clinical Logs tutorial. Please take the time to check out our other useful Exxat Prism tutorials.